Jay, what were your initial thoughts on this episode, The Pirate?
We're winding into the home stretch now, 4 more episodes left. So I was thinking, how are we going to tie all this together? And what better than having some people fighting and having a battle and talking about a myth? So I think we are starting to put a tidy button on what's happening here in season 3 for The Mandalorian. So I was excited to see the action turn that it took. What about you, Tom?
It certainly took an action turn. This one was a kind of a rocking and rolling episode. We had some great battle scenes. We had the pirates, Navarro, and the Navarro asked the New Republic for help, and they don't get it. So they have to ask the Mandalorians, and they come and save them. So we see Bo-Katan once again as a leader or the commander of the attack force. We have some great space battle scenes. We have some great on-the-planet battle scenes. And we have the reappearance of
the Mythosaur?
The Mythosaur, yes, the Mythosaur. And that the reappearance, I guess we saw that in the last episode, but the armor meets with Bo-Katan and acknowledges the significance of that reappearance. So that was pretty cool. And I guess the thing that foreshadows where we're going is it's no one's surprise. It turns out Moff Gideon, the baddie in this series, or the head baddie, is not in his transport has crashed and his body is not found. So that's a pretty good sign that we're going to see him again. It was interesting that the whole scenes early, certainly in the first third of this episode, where they appeal to the New Republic, and the New Republic really has no interest in protecting the planets on the Outer Rim, and they don't view planetary security as either very important because they haven't provided the resources to do it, or they just don't care. Under the Empire, we had order. We didn't have chaos. And I think that's maybe not in this series does that really become a big issue, but it may, leading to the First Empire, one of the reasons it's able to rise so quickly against what we call in this series the New Republic. So I thought that part was interesting. Bo-Katan really showed, I think, more leadership chops as we had expected, given what her role has been so far. That was pretty cool. And like I said, the foreshadowing of Moff Gideon.
Can we talk about jetpacks for a second?
Sure.
In the 60s, you had stuff like that. And then you had in the 80s a movie called The Rocketeer from Disney. And I think you could go really wrong with jetpacks, but they're so damn cool. And it's like, wouldn't you want to fight on a ship or a TIE fighter and then you zoom right in? And once again, Jon Favreau's got to be the kid in the candy store because to have all this cool stuff to play with. So I was just thinking that we are so lucky that we got somebody like that who can marshal the creative forces together to create something like the jetpack and make it look not cheesy. And I think some of that's green screen and the current technology that's out there. But this is the right time to be making this movie. This series. It might have reflection back to the 60s and the 70s on one of the prior podcasts when I was talking about Planet of the Apes and stuff. But every time I rewatch these things, I'm just in awe of the care that they've taken to put this together and that it always works.
Well, the jetpack has been a consistent part of The Mandalorian, Jay, since the original trilogy series. So that's been something that all Mandalorians, or at least the bounty hunter Mandalorians, have utilized. And we had some in earlier episodes in this season 3, some great chase scene when the boy's kidnapped, and then the battle scene where Din Djarin shows up and blows up whatever that creature was, a lizard or something that attacked their base camp. And even in that scene, they immediately took to the air. So it's clearly a part of their culture, but more importantly, it's a part of their fighting style. And they can do that where Others obviously can't. At least we don't know of others who can. There may be others who can, as we find out later in this series. But yeah, the jetpack is cool. Great call out on James Bond. Bill Lee and the Rocketeer. I'd forgotten Jennifer Connelly was his love interest in that. I saw her recently on the Twitter feeds, or the site formerly known as Twitter. So I thought the Rocketeer was way ahead of its time. Sorry it didn't make a bigger splash. But yeah, having a jetpack is very cool. But you're right, it could go very wrong.
And is this the episode with Tim Meadows playing the government functionary?
Yes.
How does Tim Meadows find his way into the Star Wars universe?
Everyone in Hollywood is separated by what? 1 degree of separation? Something like
I loved it because there was a droid who just messed with him and gave him the big middle finger. He's I'm organizing all my stuff and I can't have anything there. And then the droid just throws the stuff down and makes a beeline. It's got no respect, and especially no respect from the droids.
When you get no respect from the droid, you're moving towards Rodney Dangerfield territory.
Here's another thing I noticed. Whenever Din Djarin talks to whatever that droid, he's like, "Good job, buddy. Way to go, buddy." And I don't really think the droids had that kind of feeling, but I guess if you want a droid to do really well, say, "Good job, buddy."
Yeah, that was a little interesting as well. And you have to wonder what the real relationship between many of these people and their droids are, although nothing closer than R2D2 and C3PO with Luke. So perhaps no surprise.
Mythosaur, is that only come up in this part of The Mandalorian, or have they referred to the Mythosaur before?
We hadn't heard or seen of the Mythosaur, as I recall, before season 3.
Okay.
So we saw it at least in episode 2, and then in episode 3, I believe, as well. And it is clearly a part of the lore of the Mandalorian, but even more than simply the lore, Jay, it's a creature that signifies royal leadership in the Mandalorian on planet Mandalore. So pretty important fable, or
omen
would be the right word, origin story. Somebody must have defeated the dragon at some point, or the Mythosaur.
Again, I know we dropped this in the first few series that, again, I'm just really wondering if there are any scripts out there from when Gina Carano was in this, because basically Bo-Katan is really right up there. She's probably more the star than the Mandalorian. So I'd love to have seen how this arc of 8 episodes was affected, and whether they just substituted one for one, or if they had to really completely change the backstory to bring in Bo-Katan.
And now that we're in season 3, Jay, my sense would be that she had been gone so long, she wouldn't have been a part of even the early drafts for season 3. So maybe she was. If she had been a part of this, it would have been very different, because I think, as you correctly note, Bo-Katan is really a key star here, and I don't think Gina could have provided the Mandalorian with the backstory of what he had to do to become redeemed, and then how his people could be redeemed. I don't think Gina Carano could have done that. I think it had to be a Mandalore do that, as she is doing so far in this season. So what were your maybe any screenwriting insights, or at least things that tickled your fancy from the screenwriter's perspective in this episode, Jay?
I think that there's some just things that they had to lay out there, some breadcrumbs to pick up in the next 3 episodes. And that was where they found the beskar alloy that was inside of the transport with Moff Gideon. So I had pretty much, up until this point, I'd forgotten about him. And I guess there was a point where he was talking with the woman who set up the guy to lose his memory. I think that even when they go off on an episode and they take their little jaunt, there's still somebody who's paying attention to, we've got to move this train along, we've got to get to the end. So even something as small as just a little thing of alloy is not too small to matter in the Star Wars and Mandalorian universe.
Jay, I think that'd be a good place for us to end this episode. I hope our listeners will join us again for our next episode, which is entitled guns for hire. Until that time, I'm Tom Fox.
And I'm Jay Rosen. Thanks for joining us.